Imagine spending months on set only to call your own movie a piece of shit. On the record, today I'm counting down 10 famous actors who absolutely despised their own movies. The Happening was supposed to be a surefire hit. M. Night Shyamalan at the helm, post Sixth Sense, Mark Wahlberg and Zooey Deschanel running for their lives as the world falls apart. On paper, it looks solid. In reality, it's a disaster. Mysterious deaths are happening across the Northeast. Wahlberg playing a high school science teacher on the run with his wife as humanity crumbles. Eventually, they figure out plants might be killing people, releasing toxins to wipe us out. Shyamalan insisted it was a B-movie about paranoia, but critics didn't get the joke. Instead, the film turned into an unintentional comedy. Wahlberg only signed on because Shyamalan seemed like a safe bet. He admitted later, "The Happening is a bad movie I regret doing." He even cracked jokes about it in press, told Amy Adams she dodged a bullet by turning down Zooey Deschanel's role. And looking back, Wahlberg said, "You can't blame me for not wanting to try to play a science teacher. At least I wasn't playing a cop or a crook." Jacob Elordi's opinion on the Kissing Booth series is no secret. He flat out hates it. He took the role to get started in Hollywood, but never cared for the movies themselves. In his words, "I didn't want to make those movies before I made those movies. Those movies are ridiculous. They're not universal. They're an escape." And he's not wrong. The Kissing Booth is pure algorithm fodder. Joey King's character falls for her best friend's older brother Noah, played by Elordi, and the rest is just teen romance cliches. Off-screen, Elordi and King actually dated, then broke up, and still had to shoot 2 more sequels together. Awkward doesn't even cover it. Elordi said the whole thing was hard to make peace with, especially since it clashed with his real taste in movies. Joey King said she'd do it all again for the fans, but it's clear neither of them had fun. The original movie became one of Netflix's most watched in 2018, though Netflix never released real numbers. Some actors just dislike a film. Julia Roberts, on the other hand, went nuclear. She called I Love Trouble a piece of plain and simple. Behind the scenes, things were even messier. The movie pairs her with Nick Nolte as rival newspaper reporters turned reluctant partners, thrown together by a train derailment and a government cover-up. It's meant to be a light screwball comedy, but the real story was on set. Roberts and Nolte hated each other. She once described him as completely charming and very nice, but also completely disgusting. Nolte shot back, calling her not a nice person. The feud was so intense that they allegedly refused to film scenes together. Body doubles had to fill in for shared shots, and Disney's marketing team had to literally airbrush photos to make them look friendly. Even with all the drama, I Love Trouble barely made back its budget before disappearing into cable movie limbo. Charlize Theron found out the hard way what happens when a promising setup falls apart in execution. Reindeer Games was supposed to be a holiday thriller, a veteran director, rising stars, Ben Affleck in the lead, and Theron as his love interest. What the studio got was a mess so bad that the crew called it Reindeer Blames behind the scenes. Affleck here plays Rudy, a con who pretends to be his dead cellmate so he can hook up with Theron's character. Her brother drags him into a casino heist on Christmas Eve, and the whole thing just gets more chaotic from there. Even John Frankenheimer, the director, couldn't hide his frustration. He called Affleck a kid who can't act and openly said he was done making movies like this. Test audiences laughed at what was supposed to be the tense climax, so they had to reshoot the ending completely. The film bombed, and Frankenheimer retired from theatrical films right after. As for Theron, she's always been upfront. She did it for the chance to work with Frankenheimer, and she had no regrets about the paycheck, but she was mortified by the finished film. Tom Hardy can handle cage fights, villains, and apocalyptic road trips, but drop him into a romantic comedy, and even he admits it was pure misery. This Means War put Hardy and Chris Pine as CIA buddies, using spy tactics to sabotage each other's dates with Reese Witherspoon. It sounds like it should be fun, but Hardy hated every minute. Dozens of rewrites, directors dropping in and out, and a shoot that never settled on a tone. The crew called it CIA meets The Bachelor, and even Witherspoon was a last-minute addition after Legally Blonde 3 fell apart. The studio cut out most of the darker jokes, and test audiences forced them to change the ending. So instead of Witherspoon's character ending up alone, the love triangle got a winner. Hardy swore off romantic comedies for good. He said, "I didn't understand how you could do something that is so much fun and be so miserable doing it." The movie did fine financially, but Hardy was out. He's never gone back to the genre. Even when you star in the biggest movie franchise in the world, it doesn't mean you love every performance. By the time Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince rolled around, Daniel Radcliffe was completely over his own work. He's been honest about it. He watched the film and cringed, calling his acting one-note and complacent. For him, every scene was a reminder of what he wanted to do better. He loved the people on set, Gary Oldman, David Thewlis, and the madness of making Potter movies, but he couldn't stand seeing himself on screen. He wasn't the only one with the issues there, of course. Michael Gambon, for example, was so drained by Dumbledore's cursed potion scene that he refused to rehearse it a second time. You get one take, that's it. Alec Guinness brought weight and credibility to Obi-Wan Kenobi, but nobody could have guessed how much he hated the whole thing. He called the dialogue lamentable and admitted, "Apart from the money, I regret having embarked on the film." Even fans weren't spared. When a kid told Guinness he'd seen Star Wars more than 100 times, Guinness only agreed to sign an autograph if the boy promised never to watch it again. Despite all that, Guinness kept things professional on set. Harrison Ford said he was always prepared, always polite, even if it felt like gritting his teeth through every line. Star Wars itself was chaos behind the scenes, props breaking down, the crew calling it Lucas's folly, and everyone, including the cast, making fun of George Lucas's script. Harrison Ford told Lucas straight, "You can type this stuff, George, but you sure can't say it." The studio wrote it off, letting directors sign away sequel rights for free, expecting nothing to come of it. When it blew up at the box office, Fox stock doubled, and the studio had to call marketing interns back just to print enough posters. Faye Dunaway's Joan Crawford performance burned itself into pop culture, but for her, Mommie Dearest became a career-defining regret. The film started as a serious biopic, but by the time it hit theaters, it veered into unintentional camp. Paramount tried to market it as a drama, but midnight screenings quickly turned it into a cult comedy. Dunaway hated what the project became. She said it gave people irretrievably the wrong impression of her, and she refused to talk about it for decades, blaming it for wrecking her career. Decades later, Dunaway's take now is blunt. You can't be ashamed of the work you've done. You make a decision, and then you have to live with the consequences. And Christina Crawford, whose memoir inspired the film, said she was both horrified and amused to see her story become a punchline. Ben Affleck has never been shy about what went wrong with this movie. On paper, it was meant to cash in on Bennifer-mania, Affleck and Jennifer Lopez at the height of tabloid buzz. In reality, the movie became an instant punchline. Affleck called it a sort of horse's head in a cow's body. Sony forced a dark, crime-driven script into a romantic comedy at the last minute, chasing headlines instead of a story. Test audiences hated it. Executives ordered reshoots. Martin Brest, the director, lost final cut and disappeared from Hollywood. The plot here barely mattered. Affleck played a low-level mob enforcer sent to kidnap a prosecutor's brother. Lopez's character shows up, and the rest is infamous Hollywood history. The movie bombed, Affleck took the hit, and the whole project, as he said, engendered a lot of negative feelings that lingered for years. Even he admits the movie probably deserved the beating it took. Christopher Plummer always respected the craft, but he never hid his feelings about the sound of music. To him, it was awful and sentimental and gooey. He called it the sound of mucus and spent years trying to inject some humor into Captain Von Trapp, a character he found flat and dull. Plummer described the experience as flogging a dead horse. The film went on to win 5 Oscars and become one of the most beloved movies ever made, but for him, it just wasn't his kind of story. He even criticized his own performance, saying he got bored playing the part, and the subject matter did nothing for him. But after decades of holding a grudge, Plummer changed his mind. In his memoir, he wrote that he felt a sudden surge of pride for being part of it, calling it warm, touching, absolutely timeless. So even the toughest critics can come around in the end.